Hi everyone, it's me again, Ron from the product team for databases here in Google Cloud. Today we're happy to host Sergio Salvatore, a senior director of engineering from Vimeo, and he's going to tell us about how our databases help keep their platform up and running. From the Google side, our host is Pranav Nambiar, a director of product management here for Google Cloud Databases. So let's start. Sergio, can you introduce us to Vimeo, please?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Vimeo is a leading player in the growing video SaaS market. We provide a complete suite of video tools for every size and kind of business, from local shops to global enterprises. We're serving over 200 million users across more than 190 countries and rolling out new capabilities that we believe will unlock end-to-end adoption of video across departments and teams. We recently launched a new enterprise product, a corporate video library, that will change the ways organizations create, share, and organize their video across streams and departments.
Nice. Hi, Sergio. As an all-in-one video solution, Vimeo is clearly in a space where there's a very high bar for customer experience and a lot of challenges as well along with it. Can you share with us some insights into the key challenges in your industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the big challenges for me is the long tail of content that we have. So certainly we have some content that's very popular and very easy to cache in that sense, that it's sort of predictable. We can put things in fast buckets and make them available to users relatively easily. But we have a very long tail of content that we want to provide the same user experience for. And doing that sort of intelligently and efficiently is a challenge, just in general. And as I said before, we're talking about 200 million users. About 1.6 million of those are paid subscribers. There's 350,000 new videos added per day, and 100 billion views that are happening. So that's just tricky.
Great. Can you also tell us a little bit more about your use cases and the key managed database services that you use?
Sure. I can certainly give you a sampling. We use Bigtable for video transcripts, and we use Cloud SQL for some sort of lower volume satellite services. But at the core of things that we need to have highly available, we use Cloud Spanner. And in particular, we use it for a video metadata indexing service. So as you might imagine, with a company like Vimeo, people are uploading content to us all the time. We store that in cloud storage. And then we transcode it in various qualities to optimize for various devices. And we need to keep an index, a catalog of all those files that are being created, so that when we need to play it back, we can find where all of that stuff is and play it back for the user. And we need to have a database that's very scalable and highly available. If that index is down or unavailable or slow, then playback can be compromised, and that's not something we want to do. And not to mention that as the business grows, we're just adding more and more content to this database. And we want to make sure that we can scale easily there. And we use a multi-regional spanner instance, so we get 5 nines of reliability and availability. We're using about 16 spanner nodes right now that cover 15.8 or so billion rows and about 4.5 terabytes of space.
Great. Well, awesome to hear that you're using our transformative databases such as Bigtable and Spanner. Definitely at the scale at which you're operating, there are a number of technical challenges that you kind of need to conquer every day, literally. I'm sure many of our other customers would also like to learn about the insights that you have had during this journey. So can you maybe provide us a little more details on what made you choose GCP and these specific managed databases and your journey to GCP?
Absolutely. So we initially engaged with Google because of the excellent performance that there was between GCE and GCS. I think that was something that was going to allow us to create a really high quality playback and upload environment for our customers. So the first version of things was basically building packaging and delivery services in GCP with files backed by GCS. And that was successful for us. And it sort of set the stage for us to be able to migrate out of what we were in at the time, which was a co-located data center, which many companies of our age were in. And we were basically running most of our services on-prem, and they were backed by MySQL. And we basically took all of those services and lifted them out of the data center and moved them into GCP. And initially that worked great for us, but we realized at that point that we felt like we were outgrowing MySQL, in particular for the metadata indexing service that I was talking about before. So we started building and designing a next generation service that we could use Spanner as the backing store for to get those kinds of availability and scalability requirements that we wanted. And the advantages of that being a managed database basically is that we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about patching and upgrading and scaling. Scaling is very simple. I can just press a button and scale up to more nodes that I need. And we had some internal expertise with Spanner, which was very helpful. So it made it sort of a natural choice for us to use for this case. And I think it will definitely allow us to scale to the heights that we want to in the future.
Nice. In today's world, frankly, when every company is kind of looking at moving to the cloud, one of the biggest hindrances or challenges is migrations. And you folks have already, gone through that journey and actually, completed migrations very successfully. So as part of this, could you maybe share with us some of your high-level insights and lessons learned from your migration experience that you think other customers may find really helpful?
Yes, definitely. I've done this a few times in my career, and I think one of the main things I can suggest is trying not to change your application too much before you move it into the cloud. Try and keep the number of variables minimized so that when you lift your application out and start deploying it in the cloud, maybe the issue that you're going to have is with your cloud configuration. And it's not the application itself, the software, that's somehow doing something different because you just changed it. So I think that would minimize variables and minimize the types of things that you might have to debug when doing things like that.
Awesome. Could you also provide some details on your overall architecture?
Absolutely. Yeah. We run most of our applications today on GKE. And that's quite an evolution, I think, from where we were before. We were running on-prem in a data center and bare metal. And now we're running, in a containerized environment. And it took us a bit to get there. We sort of undertook containerizing the application as part of building a new system to run asynchronous jobs. So we wanted to do that in a different way, and we wanted to leverage GKE and preemptible instances in particular to be able to take advantage of lower costs there. And obviously, one of the first things we needed to do was containerize the application, which was not really an easy task, but we got it done. And then we built that system to manage asynchronous jobs, deployed that out into production, gained some experience there with how things were working in GKE, and then started to feel confident with what was happening there. And then took those learnings and migrated the rest of the application to run on that same stack. And we're continuing to do that. Most of the environment now is in GKE though. And we're using other things sort of as connective tissue for talking about PubSub for asynchronous communication. And then, as I said before, like Spanner and Dataflow and BigQuery, and to be able to do things like business intelligence analysis and optimization and things like that.
As an advanced user of databases, I'm sure you've used pretty much every access pattern and functionality that we have on offer. When you look at all the features that you have, let's say from Cloud Spanner, what is the one thing that you feel is really useful and you would like to share it with the rest of our customers?
Yeah, I would say the point-in-time recovery functionality has been really useful for us. We've been migrating data from that MySQL table into this new system backed by Spanner. And as you might imagine, when you're doing that kind of migration, there's some transformation that happens in the process and some bugs can crop up in there. So when we're doing some test migrations, we're able to just run our process, migrate things into Spanner, then run some analysis on that migration process and have a sense for whether it worked or not, and then shake out any bugs that might crop up there. And then basically click a button and go back to where we were before and run the same process again and see if we've improved things. So that's a pretty powerful thing to be able to do. If we get corrupt data, we can just go back like we have a time machine. And then sort of along those same lines is being able to read from stale timestamps is kind of a cool thing. Sometimes it's useful to know what the value of a row or a column was, and to be able to go back in time there and discover that quickly is really cool.
Great to know that point-in-time restore and stale reads has been very useful for you. Let me switch the question around. What if you had a magic wand and you could make a wish for a specific feature on Cloud Spanner? What would that be?
Yeah, so I think when we were starting our Spanner journey, we had to think pretty deliberately about the topology that we were going to choose, and that wasn't a difficult decision because we knew we wanted to use multi-regional instances eventually. But at the time that we were designing the system, we didn't have an initial need for that. And obviously there's an expense associated with that. So it would have been nice to be able to start with a smaller deployment that maybe wasn't multi-regional, and then be able to click a button later and change it to multi-regional after the fact. We probably would have made use of that. So that we could save some cost there and not necessarily have to reserve a whole bunch of resources that we didn't need at the time.
Got it. Well, thanks a lot for your feedback. I think the good news is this is something that we're actively working upon. And so you should be able to hear more about this shortly. Thank you so much, Sergio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio, for joining us today and telling us about your database story. Thank you, Pranav, for hosting. From me and everyone here in Google Cloud Databases, thank you for joining us, and see you next time.